Well, hi there. My name is Sandy Alnock. I'm an artist and paper crafter here on YouTube, and I'm going to show you how to make a fun fold card today. This is not a fold that I invented, but it's one we used a lot in Operation Right Home back in the day. And I'm going to use these cute squirrels from Art Impressions to make some Valentines with the fun fold card. And what we need to create first is some panels, and I'm going to create panels that I've already die cut, and I've stamped them with the image. I've die cut them out of some Nina cardstock, 80 pound, and I'm just going to color me some squirrels. Art Impressions makes really cute little animal stamps, and I love to color them. They're just so much fun. And last year they had some skunks instead of squirrels, and they were hugely popular. And I'm going to show you at the end of this video a picture of a couple cards I made with the fun fold format using the skunks too. So if you want some stinky joke types of cards for Valentine's Day, I will have that linked for you, as well as all the supplies in the doobly-doo down below here on YouTube, as well as over on my blog where you can pin some stuff. And I'm just going to be coloring my squirrels using my Copic markers. I've got an orangey color underneath of these browns because I wanted it to be sort of a happy brown, and putting a color underneath can sometimes just lift all the other colors and make them a little brighter. And I'm going to show you on this one how to make his tail look a little bit on the kind of fuzzy side, so it's like kind of a wispy sort of thing. Part of which will be using your flick stroke, which is kind of letting your stroke at the very end lift up, which makes it a sharper point at the end. It's something that takes a lot of practice, and the more practice you get, the better you get at it. I'm doing really short flicks on a lot of this and just kind of adding a little bit of my mid-tone color here to soften out where I put the darks. And pardon me, my voice is just starting to come back from cold as I'm doing this voiceover, so I'm probably sounding a little rough today. And then I'll go back in with my lightest color, my YR14, to start to blend out some of that other color that I've already had down there. Now I went right over top of his eye, so I went in and fixed that with my white pen, but here's where I'm going to start working on the fuzziness of that tail. I'm going to make kind of reverse flicks going back into the tail using my white pen and covering up that black outline, because the black outline is a harsh sort of outline, and I want it to look like it's fuzzy and it's sort of ending off in outer space in white. So I want it to feather out to white. Now it looks a little funky here, so what I'm going to do is let this dry after I get this first coat on and go back in with a little Copic marker. We're going to do that really gently, really tenderly. We don't want to mess up our marker nibs, but I've found some ways that we can kind of work back and forth. But I'm going to let that dry while I work on all of the acorns in here. The acorns, I wanted to have a different kind of brown. I didn't want to have that bright orangey color underneath, so I'm going with my E4s, which are a pretty neutral kind of brown. And I decided to go over the whole acorn, each one of them. Forgot a little paw there. And I'm just going to fill them all in. Different browns have different amounts of other colors in them. Some are a little redder, some are a little greener. As you get into the E8s, they start ending up being really greenish. This one is a little more on the neutral side. It's a little toward the green, but it's pretty nice. And you can see the contrast that it has from the fur on the squirrel. So he's going to look all happy, and the nuts are going to be a little bit more on the neutral looking side. So I'm just going to color all of them in with a base coat of this E44, and then start working on adding some depth to it. And by taking an E59 as a nice dark marker, I'm making a V at the bottom of each one of those triangles, or triangles, they're squares, they're four sides, but I'm making a little V at the bottom of each one, and that's giving me that texture. It almost looks like it's bumpy, and that's what we want for this acorn texture. As you get into the smaller nuts, it's harder, so I'm just kind of doing some little scribbling and little dots kind of things, because it's a little hard to get the Copic marker in there. If you do it on one, like that main one he's holding, that's the biggest one, and you do that successfully, people's eye will read the rest of them as having been done properly. So even if you only succeed on one, succeed on the big one. And now to add some striations in the acorn from the bottom up, I'm using the darkest color, going about halfway up. And you can see I'm not being real super careful with it. I'm just making some strokes going up If you can lift up at the end of that stroke and make them get thinner, that's going to help you in the next step. But, you know, just make some lines like this. And then I'm going to take a color that's lighter than that, an E37, which was my dark color that I used for the squirrels. And I'm going to join them from the top. And they're not specifically joined. Don't feel like you have to do math and get them all to align perfectly, but that means the bottom of that stroke is going to be darker than the top of that stroke. That's how we're getting a blend in a line that we're drawing to get that texture. Now right now it looks like we have these weirdly striped acorns, but now I'm going to go back with that E44, the color I started out with in the very beginning, and do one layer over top. I'm not going to scribble too much. If I start going back and forth a lot, I'm going to lose all that texture I've added. But when I add just that final layer on top, it just sort of pulls the whole thing together, and now it looks like it's got this wonderful acorny texture on it without you having to do anything on top other than one coat of this nice brown color. So I'll fill in all my little hearts, and by now the tail is about ready to work on again. So I'm going to jet back over to that and take my dark marker, and I'm going to go right over top of part of it and make some of those lines from the inside extend back out, because when you're working with a white pen, you're not going to get a fine point to it. You're not going to get a fine tip, but I can get that fine point with my Copics. So I can go back toward that white line. I could even go over top of it here with a W marker, which is going to add a little color for that white to be up against, because white doesn't show up unless it shows up against something. So that gray is going to add a little bit of that. So you can see I'm getting that texture. Now, if your marker picks up any of that white pen, scribble it off right away on a piece of scratch paper. You don't want that white pen messing up your nibs. So this is one of those things you want to be real delicate with. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading at the bottom with my warm gray markers and just spread that color out. And you can use lighter colors than I did too if you need to do that. And now I'll go back in with my white pen and just add a few more strokes here and there to fuzz out some other parts. So here on his ears, I want to make his ears look like they've got white fur coming out. And you can see that once you cover up that stamped line even partially, it just starts to look like that's white fur rather than a harsh line, which was kind of fun. It's a nice alternate to have when we're coloring animal stamps. And now I'll add a little tiny bit more on my acorns and a little bit of a B00 in the background. This is just something to add a little more bright color and a little bit of something for my squirrel tail to be up against, because as I said, the white will show up when it has another color that it's next to. Here's a little tip for coloring when you're blending into white. I'm doing white, not white, I'm doing colorless blender polka dots, like big dots in the areas where I'm blending into white. If you just scribble over top of it, you're going to push everything in a line, but if you do it in a broken up line, you're going to be a little better off. So I'm adding a little tiny bit more, sorry my big fat hand is in the way, a little bit more to give him some pointy ears on top. And then I'm adhering my panel for my fun fold card onto the outside of this prepped panel. So I have a black layer and a red layer. And now my card front is ready and finished. So now it's time for the fun fold part. I'm taking this piece of paper and I'm going to score it at 4 1/4 and 4 1/4 again. So I want 2 4 1/4 panels and then a short panel. So I'm going to fold that in half and then score this one. And this is a 3 1/4 inch panel. You can also do a 3-inch panel depending on what size the rectangles are that you have that you're working with. And now I'm attaching one of the 4 1/4s down to a panel for the back. So you need 2 of these panels that are the red and black. And then I'm going to add on my front onto the front of this Z fold basically. We called it a fun fold. I'm not sure why I didn't call it a Z fold, but then it gives you an extra panel for writing a message. And when you're sending Valentine's, that's a great time to write an extra message to somebody. You could do some stamping, put some more squirrels in there, put some more of the acorns, and you could also just have lots of room to write a note. So this is what it looks like, and it folds down nice and flat in an envelope, but it has more room in which to write. So I want to show you some other cards that I did that were vertical. So I'm using the same format, I'm just changing up the measurements, and I will give you the measurements over on my blog, so if you want to go over there. And this is still a 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 panel, but they're just folded differently. So I'm using an 8 1/2 inch piece and doing some folds on the 3 1/4 inch side. So I'll have visuals that you can download and save for yourself to do a card if your image is vertical. So these are other images from the squirrels, and I use the same colors and the same technique for coloring this squirrel. And then there's this little guy who's also flying in the air, which is pretty fun to see him soaring through the air as he is having fun dragging his little squirrel buddy around. Now, I did tell you I was going to show you the skunks as well, so here they are. Adorable as they are, oh my gosh, I love skunks. There's just something about them that's fun, and especially if you're making cards for your kids or grandkids, they just love skunk and squirrel puns, anything rodent related. So thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me. If you would like to subscribe to my channel, feel free to click on my face right there. You can also watch one of the videos that's here. There's also a video of the coloring of the skunks. And I will see you guys next time. Take care and have a great day.